Hey, it's Andrea, and I wanted to share with you an sort of a breakthrough epiphany moment that I had after getting some training. The training was in Nashville. It was with David Neagle, and it was just a one-day training. And I had lots. There's so much information that I took away from that. I have like pages and pages of notes that I still need to review and go over and unpack so that we can all benefit from it. But I had this one thing that stuck out for me, which ironically wasn't in the content exactly. It was direct from David during lunch. And it wasn't even that I just went, oh yeah, when I heard it during lunch, but then the effect came actually the next morning when I woke up and I laughed out loud. And John was like, what is up with you? And I just had this like light bulb moment around a money story that I have carried with me all my life that has been impacting my actions, the actions that I take for my business. And because of the area that it impacted, it has definitely affected my bottom line income. I mean, my income in general, but my income, like now that I can deal with it, I mean, now that I recognize it and can sort of, set it in its own space, I'm all of a sudden things are different. So let me just explain. I have, so the gist is that things that you learned, sort of the work that he does, things that you learned before you, or at least this level, things that you learned before you were 7 are the things that you took on in an unfiltered way. So anything that your parents said out loud about, in this particular instance, we're talking specifically about money stories. So anything they said about being poor, being out of work, being wealthy, having abundance, anything that they said, like the words that they used, were taken on by you. So I don't have anything like dramatically obvious in my at least that I haven't remembered yet in my personal history. So although I would have, I think, if my father had been in the house. He and my mother divorced when I was 4 or 5, and so it's almost a moment. I live near him now, and we're close, and we share things and whatever. But when I was growing up, he would not have been a good influence for me for money. I mean, I would have been a completely different person. I can see that now, because I myself am calling him out on his money stories now, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had grown up with him daily. Okay. Anyway, so this money story actually comes from my mother's father, so my grandfather and her sister in particular, and then by sort of osmosis, my mother too. But my grandfather influenced my aunt tremendously, and she was a big feature of my life growing up. A lot of our values, my brothers and I, the family values came from there because they were a whole family. They weren't a broken up family. And my mother depended on my aunt quite a bit to take us for holidays and whatever. So there were lots of good messages that came out of it, and this one you wouldn't think that it would be impactful the way that it has been, but it has been, and it's really funny. So my grandfather grew up, well, he was a young, in his late 20s, 30s in the Depression. So my aunt and my mother were born in around 1940, and so they had, there's a lot of frugality stuff that goes with that. That's not the thing exactly. It is, but it isn't. So there was this ongoing message that I got because my mom moved to New York and my aunt lived in Washington, D.C., and my grandparents lived in Ohio. And there was this constant message of you don't call people long distance. You don't talk on the phone for any amount of time more than absolutely necessary in an emergency kind of situation, like half a minute and you're done, that kind of thing. Because long distance, before they deregulated whatever they did with the long distance services 30 years ago or better, whatever, used to be extremely expensive to call even nationally. So whatever it was landed on my brain that that's what you don't do. You don't call people long distance. You don't talk on the phone. You don't. That it's bad. And what do you do instead? You write letters. You want to talk to somebody, tell them a story, express your love and affection or whatever. You write them a letter. That's the mantra of the Bowsers and Geyers and Sloans, and even my father's mother was somewhat like this. My grandfather was very specifically, it was a thing. And so how has that impacted my marketing? Well, here's what David said on Saturday that caused me to wake up the next morning and figure this out. So, and he doesn't even know that he did this because it's common sense, but the moment that he said it, I knew that it was like true, and then in the morning I'll tell you about that in a second. So we were talking about, we were at lunch. It was a great lunch. If you ever have the opportunity to go to one of these events, they're going to feed you amazing. It's amazing how well they feed you. It's just, food and me, I like food. So anyway, so I wasn't even going to, we each, there were about 15 of us, and that we each had an opportunity to ask a question. He sat at the sort of the end of the circle of tables, and partway through the meal, he was ready to answer, had eaten and we had eaten, was ready to answer some questions. So we each had an opportunity to ask a question going around the table, and I didn't really have one. That I was just sort of like being a sponge and taking all this stuff in. So I was actually the third person, and I was thinking, I'm going to have to skip it, and I'm not going to be able to take advantage. But the guy who asked right before me brought up some kind of a sales question, which caused David to talk about one of his clients who had been doing, in order to make her marketing offers, her event offers, what it turns out to be, flow, like the flow, like the starting, getting people introduced and ascending them up to bigger offers. She had been doing tour stops, which are database, I'm reading from my notes, database-based. So you have regions that you recognize that you have the most influence in. Once you have your list sort of going, you get to where you have like areas, pockets of people that you can go and sort of be there and invite them to you. And that he said that it was schedule intensive, and then you upsell them obviously into a larger, over-deliver, send people away with all the value, and then offer to work further, deeper with them. Got that part. I understood that. But I asked him to speak a little bit further on that because it was just mentioned in passing, and I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. I have been thinking about doing events for a while now, and I don't even know I don't even like enjoy giving parties, so I have to find a way that it's okay to, and I can now that I sort of have a handle on it. But the event part wasn't, I was already on board with the events at some point in some fashion, right? But what he said was, everything in business is cyclical, so suggesting that this was not what she was doing at this point, but that the real key to success is personal contact, whatever it is that the cycle is serving up at the moment. So number one is personal contact, because they get to experience you personally and as a, in a real time, it's the best way for people to know, like, and trust you as fast as possible, and for you to deliver value to them, period. Number two is on the phone, and number three is video and sales pages, etc. And because it takes longer for you to do things one-on-one, this group kind of setting, even though it's a high touch, it's still a group setting, and you can leverage your time and efforts better that way. So I took that on board. I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I know this stuff, whatever. But I woke up the next morning thinking about his reply, and I thought, I got the internet part down. I need to do some sales letters and some, converting funnel work. But I got I'm on board with it and I'm willing. And the event part, I used to be like, never would I get on stage, never would I talk in front of people. At this point, I don't have that never in me anymore. I'm willing, so we'll figure it out. And I was like, what the heck is it about me and the telephone? And that's what came up. I was like, oh, because talking on the phone is not a good thing, according to my programming. So I guess I just wanted to share that. I just want to get that on tape because I just laughed. I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. And it's so insidious and so not logical and so still impacting everything. Because you can't be everywhere, but the phone is everywhere and you can be on the phone. Sorry about the dog. Anyway, this has gotten way longer than I ever make videos, as you well know. And darn dog. And I'll wrap it up because she's not going to stop anytime soon. She's seen a squirrel or something. But I just wanted to let you know that there are things that you don't even know that you are operating from that could be so minor and so seemingly obvious once you recognize them. They don't have to be these big, bad, major. It's probably easier if they are like really clear messages that you got as a child. But they aren't always. And this one was a big one because now I'm suddenly thinking, okay, who can I get on the phone with? And that is a 180-degree turn from me the last 10 years. Who knew? Anyway, I appreciate you for lasting this long and listening to the dog. And I'm looking forward to probably getting on the phone with you. And I'll talk to you later.